Good morning, welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd over here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering natural health on your Wednesday morning, Rise and Shine. And this morning here, we're covering kind of two topics. I'm going to just do a short piece on the dead zone that is being created somewhere down there in Louisiana in the sea. And then, secondly and mainly, I'm going to be talking about emergency preparedness, how to be a little bit more proactive and prepare for major emergencies and catastrophes. So, some ideas and a list of stuff we can do. So, I have a few things to share this morning here. So, my primary focus will be emergency preparedness. But primarily, starting off here, I'm going to talk about what's going on down there in the Gulf, and this is what we want to talk to. So, welcome again to our live talk program. Hopefully, you had a blessed night rest. And thank you for joining me here this morning. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, again for your love and your wisdom and your guidance, dear Lord, as we walk through this life, which is compared to the valley of the shadow of death. May you grant us your blessings, grant us your wisdom that we might choose best all the things that we do in this life. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So again, we're looking at natural health this morning here, and I'm going to start off straight. I'm going to go straight into this. And this is an article that I found on Mother Jones. They always cover a lot of stuff about nature and food, and it's entitled "Largest Ever Dead Zone Spells Trouble for Gulf Shrimp." So largest ever dead zone spell troubles for Gulf shrimp. And so, as you know, this is very important as we understand the biblical narrative that all the problems that we're seeing in society is also reflected in nature, and that part of the thing that's going on in nature is the simple idea that there's large die-off of things like fishes and so forth. And that's why when we encourage you to eat a plant-based diet, this is one of the reasons. So we'll start with the article here. Excess nitrogen from fertilizer runoff make it tough for sea life to survive. Paul Greenberg write in Mother Jones. This story was originally published by Food and Environmental Report Network. This past spring, Louisiana-based Professor Dr. Nancy Rabales, perhaps the world's most renowned researcher on marine dead zones, predicted that summer of 2017 would see the largest hypoxia area in the Gulf of Mexico in recorded history. The last month she was proven right. The prediction was based on May nitrogen load in the Gulf of Mexico. Rabales said that from her office at the Louisiana University of Marine Consortium, excess nitrogen accounts for 80% of the dead zone variation, and the load was high this year. Based on the load, we predict the size. It is turned out it was the largest ever. In part, heavy spring rain were to blame, because they wash nutrients off farms in the Midwest and into streams that empty into the Mississippi River and eventually the Gulf. So remember, I've been wanting to cover this article for a few weeks now, but stuff has been coming up, and I've been busy, so I've not been able to do it. And I wish I'd covered this because normally you see when this type. I remember there's two issues going on, and this is me talking here. I'm reading the article. Some issues going on here. When you think about what's happening, a lot of the problems that we face is things that we do to ourselves per se, like physically do to ourselves, lack of stress management, making bad decision, how we take care of our bodies. But a lot of things happen also is what we do to nature, because we put the poison in nature, most naturally, because we need to be able to farm in certain ways. But then that runoff goes into the streams, and then often we eat the fishes, not thinking we're poisoning the fish, and then we're going to eat the fish. So here's a good example of that here we're poisoning the Gulf. And when you poison the Gulf, sometimes the Lord has ways to readjust stuff. And that's why I say I wish I'd covered it a little bit earlier. But so is life, because what's happening right now, the Gulf has become a mixing bowl, churning and churning, as you know what's happening down there in Texas and Louisiana. So we continue with the articles here. There are now 500 dead zones around the world. fueled by nitrogen from fertilizer and industrial runoff. In the US, these affects a wide range of lakes, inland waterways, and coastal marine areas, and it appears these dead zones are getting worse. According to the Yale Environmental 360, a recent study in science project that climate change will increase the amount of nitrogen ending in US rivers and other waterways by 19% on the average over the remainder of the century, and much more in hard hit areas, notably the Mississippi, and that word there, that area there, basin, up to 24%, and Northeast 28%. So I pause there because, as you know, the industrial Northeast produces a lot of stuff, but a lot of it is sent out into the waterways, so the Delaware, the Hudson, and out to sea. Also, this is happening down by the Mississippi, the end of the Mississippi, which is the Gulf, back into the sea. So all of this poison, all this chemical industrial runoff goes into the sea, and it poisons the plants in the sea, and it poisons the fish in the sea. This is just the reality. And I've covered here that they have done research and tested fish from all the way from Maine to the Key West. So they go from all the way from Maine all the way south to the Key West, tested fish, and all the fish had levels of not only toxic and chemicals that causes cancer, but also cancers on the fish. Many fish had tumors and so forth. So this is why it's important for you to understand, as we poison nature, we have to still interact with nature, and in some cases we're eating nature. When I say eating nature, I mean the fishes or the animals. And when you do this, you're eating the things that you're poison. And remember, toxic chemicals concentrate more in animals than they do in plants. So this is significant findings that they're doing here. Continue back to the article. These increases in nitrogen do not reflect more intensive agriculture or increased human population. Rather, they reflect extreme weather events and increased total rain prediction in most climate change scenario. The article explained, even if farmers spread the same amount of fertilizer on their fields, and more will end up in the waterway. These nutrients stimulate algae growth, often turning water blue-green or red depending on the species. When the algae dies, it is consumed by bacteria, which sucks up oxygen in the process, making it tough for sea soil life to survive. In the Gulf of Mexico, the dead zone has particularly potent effect on seafood that dwells in the lower levels of the water. The things that can normally be trawled from the bottom are just not there, Rabales said. It's particularly bad for the Gulf most famous seafood, shrimp, which tend to migrate to offshore foraging area just as the dead zone is forming. When the area of low oxygen is pervasive, they can't do that, and that translates into lower size shrimp and lower price shrimp. Right, so just to take a few things here because I don't want to pile on too much before I keep going. So here's what happened, right? So bottom line, because I kind of read that choppy. So if there's less oxygen, then ultimately you end up with smaller shrimps, and then the shrimp is normally shrimp is like at the bottom of the waterway. So anything is at the bottom of the waterway end up getting affected more. Now this is significant because, you know, as in the Bible in Leviticus instructs us, very important, that we should not eat bottom dwellers, things that live at the bottom of the ocean, because at the bottom of the ocean is where you have the poop. You know, normally the cycle, the ecosystem is that the fish more at the top, they poop, everything goes to the bottom, is settled there, and then the bottom dwellers eat that. Also, anything that dies, shrimps and lobsters will eat it. If a human being drown in the water, what will eat it is the lobsters and the shrimp. They're bottom dwellers. This is why you have to cook those things live and then break off the shell and separate that, because they'll poison you. So this whole idea here that the shrimp is affected, and you can smaller size shrimp and they're more affected. Well, look, they're going to be more affected by every toxic chemical. So just imagine now they're saying here, and as I say, this was written before the storm, that the more rainfall creates more runoff into the Mississippi. As that rainfall increases, it washing all these toxic chemicals and forms more so into the Gulf. The more toxic chemicals, the animals are going to be affected primarily, or I would say this the sea insect would be shrimp, and then next would be the fishes. So as that runoff happens, the shrimp themselves now are affected because what they eat and where they live. So now you go and eat that shrimp, what you're eating is something that is not only going to be smaller because it's affected by the chemicals and the lack of oxygen, but also the shrimp is going to be swimming in all that pollution. And remember, this is written before this storm. So now think about what's going on in the storm. There's basically it's a washing machine going on down there. And as that washing machine happened, everything that is in the river banks, on the land, in the cities are just being scrubbed. If you think about now, one of the things they're saying that you have to be careful of, which I'm going to talk about later on with the disaster preparedness or emergency preparedness, is that all that water that is churning now on the land ultimately is going to wash into the Gulf. But bigger yet, all that water now is churning up toxic chemicals, it's turning up sewage, it's churning up all kind of stuff is being churned in that water, because now the whole city is a fish bowl or a ball of cereal, whatever you want, whatever is best in your mind. And then as that thing now churns all of that now, then that rain moves on up and comes up towards us here in the northeast, because that's a pattern of the rain. You know, it comes over from Africa. They say normally the rain pattern towards America works like the slave trade. It comes over from the western tip of Africa, and then it comes up the Caribbean, and then it goes up to like Louisiana, that area. Florida, Louisiana, Texas, that area, and then it comes up north and it heads northeast, and then it heads out to sea. So all of that churning now gonna basically mix all that toxic chemical and sewage and human waste and plastics and everything, and they're gonna throw it in the Gulf. Then it comes up here up north, and it throws it in the Atlantic, and then now people goes out there, catch the fish, catch the shrimp, catch the lobsters, catch the crabs, and eat it. Problem. And then there's so much cancers in our country. You can understand why. So that's a fascinating analysis by this professor here, Rabales, and how stuff works. It's very, so if there's less rainfall, the toxic chemicals stay on the farm, stay in the land, and get down into the groundwater. Is there more? Just if there's more water, it's just wash off the top and wash into the rivers. So you can understand what's going on there. A few more thoughts here from this article. In a 2013 Fern article on Dead Zone, I look at some of the mitigation measures on the way to deal with nitrogen runoff. Some farmers have tried to carefully control underground plumbing or tiling that drains their field during spring rain. Others try to plant their streamside land in forests to retain nutrients. Still others further south seek to slow the river's speed or build up marshland at the delta near the end of the Mississippi River to absorb and process nitrogen before they can hit the ocean. But many of the unformed measures are voluntarily and don't seem to work. So just a pause there, because if you remember what happened, basically because of the development, a lot of the marshlands, a lot of the lands that would normally be in the areas between the Gulf and the end of the Mississippi were destroyed. So as those marshlands destroyed, the buffer that would be created to absorb a lot of the toxic chemicals coming out from the Mississippi was gone. They were taken away. A lot of the marshland along the Mississippi and in those areas, which would be very swampy, they were taken over because they were used for development. And so these areas were removed, and hence there's no protection. Also, what happened, there's no protection on the other end, because normally when a hurricane is coming, the more reefs, marshlands, and so forth that are further out at sea and further away from development, the hurricane will hit that first and then slow down. So all of that is just gone, and hence you have this type of reality. Continue reading here. It says none of these initiatives have slowed the one factor that overwhelms all conservation measures: the impetus to plant corn. Corn is a leaky crop which does a poor job in holding nutrients in the soil. And the USDA projects this year, corn crop will be the third largest on record, despite lowest price in 11 years. We we see still larger Gulf dead zone in the years to come. It's a spike, Nancy Rabelais says, told me, but I wouldn't call it odd. Like corn, the dead zones seem to be parked at a consistently large size, unless unlike the late 80s when there just wasn't that much to map. In fact, this year dead zone could possibly be even larger than Rabelais' report. This year we did not get to the end of the western edge, she said, so it could have been 500 square kilometer larger. I didn't get to go that far, so I can't say. I asked if she made the conservative estimate of what is on track to become the largest dead zone in the world. Oh, she replied, we're always conservative. So she's basically saying that she made a conservative estimate about the size of it, and this is the largest ever dead zone in the Gulf. And as you know, the Gulf there's been a lot going on. There's been these storms, and then there's been, as you know, the BP oil spill that basically shut down the shrimping industry because of the shrimps were contaminated by all the oil that was spilled into the Gulf. So this has been something ongoing. I've covered this here, and there's an explanation of why it's important to stay away from these bottom feeders, these scavengers of the sea. Because when you eat these scavengers like shrimp and lobster, what you're eating is a lot of the filth that it scavenges and toxic chemicals into your system. And so as we see this happen, most naturally, I'll cover this here again. I'm sure they'll report on it after everything calms down, after the storm moves away, and all the crud and the garbage and the oil and the gas and the sewage and everything washes now into over the coming weeks will wash into the Gulf and poison the Gulf even more. And then we'll see now what are the results after they go back there and do their test. So keep this in mind, as I say, and especially for those you love, let them understand that most of the shrimp they eat is coming from the Gulf. And over the years, between the BP spill and between the various different hurricane and their various different massive floods. A few weeks ago, there was a flood in that area, and now they have this. All of this is just running right into the Gulf of Mexico and feeding the animals. And the animals that's going to be primarily affected are going to be bottom dwellers, because bottom dwellers, that's what they do. They just basically stay at the bottom and interact with all the filth that is sent down to them. And so, very important point, don't miss that, because again, many people believe that they're getting something great when they go for a nice thing of lobster or shrimp, not understanding that they're eating the animals that is most toxic in the sea. Now, most naturally, on land, the most toxic animal you get is like pork or alligator or snake or stuff like that. But in the sea, the most toxic you'll be getting is the bottom dwellers, the crabs, the lobsters, the shrimp. And this is what's going on. So as I say, as you see this thing developing in down there, you can know that trouble is at hand. And as the trouble comes at us, we have to be prepared and know what is underway. So I'll move to my next thought. I'm sure there's always a lot of thought on this here. So as I said to you before, and I've covered it here, that you understand as we move forward, there'll be a lot of this type of die off or dead off or whatever you want to call it of animals, and we've been seeing it consistently where there's these massive die offs. So I'm gonna move to this thing here, and what I'm gonna cover next for you is so an article that I found was interesting, and then I've been looking into this over the years. I've watched a lot of videos. I kind of done some stuff for myself at home here, where because of sometime when, especially in the winter, we lose power. So when you lose power, you always have to start thinking what to do if you lose power and get stuck in your home, especially because of what you would call it now, because of a storm, a winter storm, because now it's cold and you are the power. What do you do? So I'm going to talk about now so much more what to do if you're home, and then secondly, what to do if you have to jump out of your house and run away because something happening real bad, real fast. And so emergency preparedness, which is my main topic. I spent the rest of the time this morning here with you, just going over some things you can do to be more prepared if you're hit with an emergency. And or not so much if you're hit, but when you're hit with emergency. So this article is taken from NBCnews.com. And how to prepare for or stay safe in a tropical storm or hurricane. And I'll give you some more later. So these aren't words commonly used in the National Weather Service. Unfortunately, we saw these warnings come to life with Hurricane Harvey, the monster Category 4 hurricane that made landfall on the Texas coast late Friday, right? So, number one thing that is said here that I should state is that the first thing one has to do to be prepared for an emergency, and this is part of the article, is that the first thing one has to do is heed the warnings that are given. So that's the first thing that one has to do. Heed the warnings. If you're in an area and you're being hit, and some of you here are not in that type of zone where you're right at the coast, but most of the world lives at the coast or live near water. You know, that's just the reality of life. We develop cities near water because we need to have access to water for multiple reasons, for food and for drinking and so forth. So, first thing one has to do is if there's any emergency, because as I said, most of the world live near water, so there's always going to be water emergencies. Lakes overflow, the sea comes in, whatever, river overflows its bank. Is heed the warning that is given, because normally if in a hurricane situation or a flood-like situation, if it's predicted that there's going to be a certain amount of rain and the banks of the river could crest, and it could reach flood level and overtop flood levels, just heed the warning and get out, because again, it's better to be safe than to be sorry. And if you get out early, you can get ahead of the game and put yourself in a better situation. So heed the warning, I think, is very important. So a monster storm coming in a Category 4, Category 3, a Category 3 storm is very dangerous. I've been in that experience at least twice, and when you're in a Category 3 storm, it's dangerous. Much less a Category 4, it's deadly. There's going to be some damages and there's going to be some serious problems. So, for that reason, I think it was kind of strange that more people didn't get out. And one thing I've noticed, just my observation here before I go back to the article, when dealing with disasters and stuff, it's not what's happening most of the time while you're going through, like if it's a hurricane. It's what happened after, most of the time, not all the time, but I've noticed it's the results that happen after. A lot of time, the high will pass over and it will blow hard for a little bit, and then it passes. The vicious part, the Category 4 part, the part that is spinning the fastest. And that might happen an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. And I think what I've observed is that what happened after that is more dangerous many times. What I mean by that is that, the initial hit can tear stuff up, sure, and you can see the damage. But what follows is a trail of wind that just keep coming. And what a trail of wind does is many times it start to whatever, it's like the eye of the storm shake stuff up and sometimes rip it up, but most of the stuff is shaped. The majority of the homes, structures, you shake it. It's like it preps it up. And then the winds that come after, even though they're weaker, they just come and slowly but surely, even for hours, just keep tearing and ripping and tearing and ripping. And then after that comes the water, because the rain now come and then the rivers start to swell, place start to swell, and then whew, you start to have problems with water. And I noticed that in various different storms. Sandy did this, Katrina did this. The problem was not so much what happened after the storm passed. Everybody was like breathe a sigh of relief. Then here comes the rain. Here comes the rivers that start to swell. The lakes start to swell. Then you have a massive disaster in your hand because of what happened. And this is especially true for people living in low-lying areas. Anywhere I go and I see the land is about a foot or two above the lake, the top of the lake, or the top of the river, it seems so beautiful and peaceful. But that changes if there's a massive deluge, massive flood, massive rain. Then it's easy now for that river or that lake to go 2, 3, 4, 5 feet. It's easy. So understand this and heed the warning when there's a monster hurricane or storm. Everything that I'm going to read here going forward applies, and as I say, applies to probably 90-something% of us because we all live near water. That's just the way life is. You have to be near water somehow to live as human beings. So back to the article. Person writing this person here that I mentioned their name is a meteorologist, and it says the incredible dire language used in the warning back in 2005, the night before Hurricane Katrina made landfall in the Gulf. Back then, I was driving to work, about to go on an overnight shift on national television. On that ride, I kept thinking about the people in the warning area and hoped they would be safe in a dangerous storm to come. Now, these same thoughts turn the people in Texas, who continue to face dangers as Harvey is forecast to flood the area even more in the days ahead. Can we say Harvey is finally a tropical system that will impact United States in 2017? Unfortunately, no. Late August is the heart of hurricane season, but we are not even at the peak, which typically happens around September 10th. This means that the threat for future tropical storms and hurricane in 2017 remains. I often receive messages on social media from people wanting to know more about tropical storms and hurricane and how to prepare for them. The first thing you need to do is to understand your risk based on where you live. And it's not just coastal dwellers who are affected by hurricanes and tropical storms. According to the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, the impact from hurricane can extend from the coast to several hundred miles inland, and the most common forms of injuries or death are drowning or being hit with windborne debris. As you know, you can have something flying in the air at 100 and something miles per hour. If it hit you, you're dead for the most part, or severely damaged. So here are 6 preparedness, 6 ways to prepare for dangerous weather and stay safe during hurricane season. Number 1, make sure you have supplies on hand, including a go bag, which is what I'm going to cover part of the other half of this presentation. FEMA recommended having enough food and water to last for 3 days for every family member. That includes roughly 1 gallon of water per person, or 3 days for both drinking and hygienic purposes. Stock up on a shelf stable, ready to eat food items like canned meat, vegetable, let's read an article straight, granola or protein bars, nuts, peanut butter, and non-perishable milk. So again, he's saying think nutrient, high density food. And don't forget a manual operated, not electric, can opener for your canned food, as well as any utensils needed. Right, so before I go to the go back, so here is something that he said that is basic, And I think it's important for you to always have on hand, because we see with Sandy, we were up here in the Northeast, in New Jersey area, and we were hit and we're out of power. Some people were out of power for a few days, some people were out of power for a few weeks, depends on where you were and the severity of the damage. So right here is good sound advice. Water, for roughly include 1 gallon of water per person for 3 days, right? For both drinking and hygienic purposes. So you need about that. So you need something just for you to be able to drink, brush your teeth and so forth and so on. All right. So roughly 1 gallon of water per person for 3 days. So if it's if it's two of you in the family, that's gonna be 6 gallon, right? You need a few days just to make it through, because oftentimes what happens, even in a storm, it takes a while for things to it could take 24 hours to 72 hours for things to get to where, if you need help, rescue, getting out of the area, it could take a few days, because what happened, you could have down power lines, you could have flooding, you could have something that the water needs to recede or they need to get to you, and you need to be able to have a way just to survive. So water, number one thing on the list. So first thing is your heat of warning. Get out. If you can't get out, then you get stuck, because this happened. It's a surprise. The weather changed overnight. You woke up and they say, "Oh, situation change. It's going to be worse," and you get stuck. This is highly possible. Have water. And one of the things that been a big what I say now, it's a big thing going on or selling, is to be able to have a way to filter the water, even if you don't have the water. So you could be in a situation where you don't have the water. One of the products that I was looking at, you can see, and there's various different iteration of this product, but one of the products I was looking at on Amazon, and I have stuff here for myself, but it's always good to have something that is non-electric based. That means you don't need electricity to filter it. So most actually there's various different water filter systems that they have, where it's a charcoal filter and you can pour water in it, and then at the other end of the water you get clear, it get filtered. And then for secondary precaution, you could even have tablets that will sterilize the water, so you can have the water filtered firstly and then sterilized, just in case something happened and you did have, say if it was two of you, you had 6 gallons of water, and now we passed the third day and your water is running out. What do you do? Well, a little filter, especially a filter that you have like a jug, and you have one of those Brita, or I forget the name of the other company, filter. You pour the water in, you can get some fresh water. I always have about those filter like on me. I have like probably about 3 of them downstairs. I just keep them sealed. And just in case, because sometimes, as I say, you could run out of water. And what if you're in a situation where you run out of water, even if you have a generator, you run out of gas, so you can't pump water. You have to have a way to filter the water. The other thing that I suggest to have is, if you don't have anything like a chlorine tablets or anything like that, to try to sterilize the water, to have some charcoal, so you can actually pour some of the charcoal in the water so you drink it, just in case you're in a situation where there's water, there could be contaminants. You filter the water, you still don't feel comfortable, then you have a double filter it if necessary, and then you could just throw some charcoal in it to absorb some of any toxic chemicals, so you don't get any type of bacteria, or you sterilize it. I'll deal with that in a second. Another product that I've seen is an interesting product, is this thing called a life straw. Lifestary, something that is sealed, and you can keep it for emergency preparedness. And basically what it is, you can put it in a water source and just suck the water up, and it will filter the water. And this is something is great for emergency preparedness. You can check it out there online at various different places on Amazon.com and so forth. So it's good to have something like this, so just in case you in a situation where you did prepare and you have to run out of your house, and you have to leave the water behind, and you need to have some water, especially if you're in an area that is an outlying area, or in an area that is a big city and it's hard for people to get to you because of the damage. Streets, power lines out, streets are damaged, cars are floating down the road. you need to have something. So something like a live straw, charcoal, sterilizing tablet, filter, where you can filter the water. Another products that I've been seeing a lot on the market is basically you can have the filtration in a water bottle type situation where you pour the water in and it filters it and you drink the filtered water. So whatever that type of product is that you feel comfortable with, it's good to have this because remember we're in a time zone where more and more, as we talk about the correlation between the wickedness of man and disasters will increase. So as we see these disasters increasing, don't think that you're in always in a safe zone. Something can happen that can overtop the emergency system and the checks and balance in the system, and it could take days for them to get to you, days for them to restore water, days for them to restore power. So just in case, be prepared. And also remember, some of the time when they build these power plants and these water systems, they built it years back where they didn't think too much about disasters. So it's easy for these power plants to get overrun, easy for these water processing plants to get overrun. And then what do? You have an option. Think about the people in Flint, Michigan. There was no disaster. All the disaster was it was just terrible planning, terrible investment, terrible management, and the people for years or for months, I don't know how long, they were drinking water that was contaminated with lead and various different toxic chemicals. So I have a way to always get good drinking water. And then the next thing here is, you form basic group. You can live on protein, fat, and carb. You're not going to be healthy, but you're going to be able to survive. That's our basic what we need from day to day to survive. And so the main idea here from this list that the gentleman give is to have high energy foods. High energy foods, again, is just straight protein, carbs, and fat. Your body will get the energy that it needs. And when you talk about high energy, it's low volume, high energy. Vegetables, fruits is high volume because there's a lot of water, a lot of fiber, but it's low energy. That's good for health. But if you're in an emergency situation, you don't need a lot. What you just need is things that are high in energy. Things that will give you a lot. So again, and I'm vegan and I don't believe in anything animal based, because I think they always run the risk of getting bacteria, even if the thing is dried or canned. So I always think in an emergency situation, the best diet is a plant-based diet because especially if you can store these things. And if you can't store these things, like if you're in the ship with Noah, it'd be one thing. But we understand and we have the ability to do what he mentioned here was like granola bars. So granola bars would be, or protein bars would be one of the best option because because it's nut based and sometimes has carb in it, you can get all fat, protein, carb in granola bars. Peanut butter and nut butters, nuts, very important because again, in the peanut or nuts, you will get probably low carbs, but you will get high protein, high fat, and so you can really survive off that because your body can metabolize protein, fat for a while before it starts to cry too much for carbs. Grains are easily stored, so if you have a camping stove, you can store some grains, and you can even have that in your go bag, which is the last thing I'm going to cover. So you could have a little camping stove, one burner camping stove. If you have some grains, some whole berries, whole wheat berries, you could have a bag of that. Like one Ziploc bag of that could do you well because again, like whole wheat berry will give you carb again, fat, and protein. You have your basic nutrient in all that one product. You get all your energy from the fat, carb, protein, and you could literally have a Ziploc bag of that, and you could go days just primarily eating, just sprouting, not sprout, but soaking and cooking just wheat berries and just eating it straight. You could eat beans straight. You could have some beans canned, and you could do just a little bit of that. Now, most actually, I'll say this right now because at the sake of time, and I'm watching my time, that even when you're dealing with something like this, you can have these pre meals, these meals ready to go meals, where you could have high energy meals that are in a zip, like a sealed bag. And those are some of the options that you need to have. But just remember, if the food is high in nutrients and you can get your nutrients from that, you eat that type of food, you'll be good. Can of peanut butter, can of almond butter, granola bars, some beans, some wheat berries. You'll be surprised that you can stack a little bit of it and it could last two grown people a good little bit of time until you can get help. Because if you lose energy, you could lose everything in your refrigerator, and so non-perishable food is what you need. So high energy food is the main thing. So a little bit of that can go along a far way. So if you have a little camping stove, one of those fold-out camping stove, one burner stove, that can be in a knapsack, and you have something to filter water, and you can get to a water source, and you have those packet of high density foods on you, you could survive for days if it comes to that, and you'll be all right. If it comes to that, and as I say, sometimes these emergency happen and it takes a while to get to the people. You've seen them in various different emergencies, so you'll be able to survive, and you can basically grab a bag. Because if you saw it in the reports, many people, what they said they had was they would just grab like a garbage bag and they had to get out of their house. So in that type of situation, you have a knapsack and you have yourself stuck in there. If you run into a situation where you have to dash out your house, you just run over, grab the knapsack, and you head on out. If you can, grab a garbage bag and drop the knapsack in it if it's water, so that you can protect what's in it even more. But most of these things are going to be waterproof to a certain degree in the knapsack. The other thing that you need to do now, back to talking about the knapsack, I'm gonna kind of switch down some of this and just kind of run through this list here. It's called a go bag, so quote unquote GO/bag, a go bag. And a go bag basically have everything that you need that you can grab and run. Normally in these go bags, I'm gonna cover them because they have them selling kind of pre-packet and ready to go on Amazon. You can just buy the go bag already. Most of it is already stocked. And a go bag normally have a flashlight, batteries, and it's good to have batteries that are chargeable, a charger, so rechargeable batteries, flashlight with rechargeable batteries, a charger, a first aid kit, so a first aid kit for minor bruise and abrasions, sanitation items and hygiene items need to be in it so that you can be out and do what you have to do outside. I'm going to cover what are those. Any medication that you would need if you have any type of problem that you're taking a medication, even if it's natural, have some backup things. What are the basic herbs you need to survive? If you're out on the road, number one, I just said to you, the main thing I would tell you to have is some charcoal if you have a stomach problem. So some charcoal on you. Always have some charcoal powder in a go bag. And a battery operated radio for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Bulletins. So have one of these battery operated hand cranked radio. So there's this radio that sell online. They normally like from in the high teens to the 20s, 30s, that is battery operated, and it also has a hand crank that you can crank it for 5 minutes. You get probably, I think it's crank it for a minute, you get 5 minutes power out of it. And what it does is that those hand crank radio, you can crank it, charge the battery, and also charge your cell phone from it. But just in case you're in a situation where you're out of power, you can't charge your cell phone, and you don't know what's going on, you have one of those little battery operated NOAA radio. That's what they call. You have one of those radios, and what it is, you will be able to get bulletins or get announcements about what's happening. Because imagine you're in an area, all the trees are down, powers are out, and stuff is happening, and you don't know what's going on. At least this way, you'll have a way to pick up on radio stations that are still accessible, FM and AM radio station, and then from the government, you'll be able to hear what's happening. And Remember, this is just to give you days. This is not like you're planning to be out there for months or stuff. This is just give you days so you can figure out what's going on, figure out what you need to do if you need to march out of your house and march to a certain location. This is just giving you power. So these radios are very important just to be able to have as an emergency alert. So, I'm sure you've heard it where you go, irk, 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 it makes that noise and then all the radio stations are taken over and they'll be able to send out the bulletin. You'll be able to hear that bulletin. That's very important if you're in this situation. So that normally is some of the main things that go along there. As I said Monday, it's important to have some cash on hand. Like I say, I always say the amount of money to always have on hand as cash. That means if you're a person you don't like to have money on you because you're afraid you get robbed. But I think in your house, especially even a go bag, you just have cash in hand. For me, this is probably the primary thing other than water that I always have. Because if I'm going to grab anything, I would grab some charcoal and water. So if I had to run in my house and I'm not running out with no bag, no nothing, I'm always thinking charcoal because I always think about I can purify some water or drink water and still limit the contamination to my stomach and just have some cash. And when I say cash, I'm talking about like $150. Nothing really more. Just enough to pay you probably one night in a hotel room and some gas money so you can drive out of town. No, most actually for logical reasons. 3 nights would be more logical because most of the time this is what you're talking about, just being able to survive for a short period of time. If you're in an area like Louisiana, one night would not work. You would need to be able to have a week, 2-3 weeks before even the water start recede, so you can't even see what the damages are. But anyhow, just if you understand what I'm saying, if you're in a pinch, $100 and something just to get you somewhere to stay for a night or so, and some gas money to get out of there, probably then you get into a zone where now you can get to your ATM. So, but remember, if power is down in a certain location, it could be down for miles. So you probably have to travel for a while before you get to the ATM. So to me, it's just good to have some cash on hand. And the article here suggests having some coins also. Next thing here is to basically, other than that, the other thing here, which is I think is something that is new to me that I never really thought about, is that in the bag, before I go to my next thing, in the bag, the the person here in the article, the gentleman here, suggests that he suggests that it's important to grab yourself in the go bag they sell this where it is a waterproof container for documents and to put photocopies of documents in the bag. So if you have a bag like this, you prepared, you just have something you can just grab that bag. It's a knapsack. In it you have not per se the original because you don't have the original in there per se, because normally that's in your home. But just in case, like, you've seen a situation where there's a flood, there's a fire, the home burned down, all the person's documents are in there. But if they were able to run out of the house, they could grab that bag. And in there would have all their copies, at least a copy of their passport, birth certificate, insurance policies, any important document. They would just have a copy of it in there. So not the original per se. So if somebody grabbed the bag, they grab all the original if somebody broke into their house. But just something where in an emergency, you would have to start looking for documents because someday you could have documents in one room and in a different room, and you wouldn't be able to, in an emergency, running out of your house to find all those documents. But you could just grab the bag. At least you have a copy of your driver's license, a copy of all these different major important things that you need to call your insurance company. You have that until you can sort stuff out, but at least you have a copy. Where all the document control numbers are and so forth. So I think that was very important advice that he gave here that I would think it would be good to have. You just have it. I mean, you never know. I probably never use this thing, but most of what I'm covering here, and I'll tell you right now, you can buy one of these go bags here for let me get my beer in here, that is enough for 4 person. That costs anywhere from 120 to about, for 2 people, for about $130 to 4 people like 170, and you can get them even for $99. There's other ones I'm seeing here that is for a 4 person for $99. So it depends on the one you buy. You can get various different ones. Other important things you need to know is have a plan so your family know what to do if there's a disaster. Know your evacuation route, know where the best roads to travel, know what roads are going to flood. Most of the time, you need to get to a major highway. Most major highways that are states and federal highways are normally elevated, so they're made with the intention that they're not easily flooded. So know those routes. Most of if you have pets, make plans on how you're going to get the pets out of there, or how you're going to get them to some type of shelter or some type of care, veterinarian care, so forth. So, as I say here, have a plan for your family, how they, tell them what you're going to do, how you're going to get out of there, where you're going to go. If you have some ideas in mind where you would go, know your evacuation route. I always say it's best to know how to get to a major federal state highway because, as I said, most of them are built not to be easily flooded. Take precaution. Understand that they say a lot of time people get hit 4 to 5% of the time people get struck by lightning. They get struck on a corded landline. Lightning will go wherever, the electricity goes wherever. It's best to go easier path. So know that winds will always take down trees and stuff like that. So be careful of that. Not to be out in the middle of a driving rain unless you're forced to. And most essentially in a storm, you want to figure out where in your house you would go if it's a storm. It can't be an area that is close to a window, because if you're close to a window, projectile stuff will fly through the window and hit that window and could hit you. So know in your house. If there's a storm, if you're listening to an area in an area that has tornadoes, know where in your house you'll go. If you don't have a shelter, like an underground shelter, where in your house you would go. Any type of high wind coming through, what's the bit most protected area? Normally it's an area probably near a stairway away from the window in the trunk of the house. If you're going to go into your attic, as they were telling people, make sure that the only way you go into attic if there's a window somehow that you can get out. Some of these have some exhaust windows that probably can slip out. Or if you're going to do that, then make sure you have an axe or something to bust the roof open to get out. But know how you're going to get out and know what you're going to do, and then execute that plan. Now, I'm going to cover here a little bit before we exit each other. I'm just going to talk about some of the stuff that normally in the emergency preparedness kit. So most naturally something to purify and deal with water and to sanitize water, or just some water itself. You probably have to know to grab a gallon or two of water before you even start talking about filtering water, because what if you're in a situation where there is just too much in the water? You still have some water on hand. Even if you have to just grab a gallon of water, you sip it and share it, and hopefully it's not too hot. Raincoat is important to have in the emergency preparedness kit. I'm just talking about some of the stuff that's are in the ones that you can buy. Raincoat are important, so you have a way to keep dry, because this is going to be one of your biggest problems, especially if it's raining. Having a little tent. There's some real cheap tents that they're like almost like just tarpaulin in the preparedness kit, because again, if there's rain again, or even if it's cold and you're in a tent, you would do better than just be totally out in the elements. It would just take some of the wind chills off, just in case you run into a situation, just in case literally the house catches on fire or something. Having some mask that you can put over your face for breathing, some breathing masks, some filters. Another important thing, having like one of these universal, they normally call it like Swiss knives. So you have something that you can screw something with, you can cut with, you can do so forth and so on. Having most actually a flashlight, as I covered, having a first aid kit, having a little radio that you can get announcements on about what's happening. Just kind of going through here, just scavenging here, see what else that we miss. Sanitary items, toothpaste, a little bit of toothpaste, a little bit of toothbrush, even something to be able to bathe with. little rope. Yeah, when I say rope, not like a big rope, but the little ropes that are like probably less than quarter inch, just so if you need to tie something down. Having like a gloves so that if you need to handle like pick up stuff, if there's down trees and stuff like that, but it's limit, you can handle it. You have something you can put on and handle some stuff like that. Having a compass, which is a big thing, just in case you have to walk, you need to know where's north, south, east, and west. Having some flares can be a good thing. Having a fire starter can be a very good thing. Toothpaste, toothbrush, soap, and they cover that. Some hygienic products, especially for like a female, just in case it happened at the wrong time of the month or the right time. Some ace bandage is good, just in case you run into a problem where you need to bandage up something. Is another important thing, and I think that's about it. Probably I missed one or two things, but that's in general what it is. Oh yeah, and a solar blanket, which is a good one I've seen in some of these kits, where you can get a solar blanket. Is these kind of aluminum blankets that will hold heat in it, just in case you're in a situation where literally you're out in the area and you could have like one of these cheap tents in there, solar blankets, so you could keep at least some heat on your system and just survive. Remember what we're talking about here, sometimes just survival for a few days. And so for anything from close to $100 to probably $170 is worth just having. And remember, you have all of this. It's a worthy investment, especially if you know you live near water or you live near a disaster zone. And sometimes for $100 and something for a family of 2 to 4, it's worthwhile making the investment. Because if you make the investment, what will happen is that you're probably never going to use it. But just look at it as cheap insurance, just to kind of save your skin for a few days. And that's all. And you have something like this, yeah, something happen, it happened. If it doesn't happen, at least you have it. You throw your documents in there. You throw 100 or 200 or whatever the size of the family is, some money in there. The money's just there. You have a way to filter water. You have a little radio in there. It's just a knapsack. If something happened, you just grab it and you can go. If it's a false alarm, you go back home. If it's not a false alarm, you can survive for a few days. You have a few pieces of food in there. You have some peanut butter. Buy the latest one, the newest one. You have some granola bars. And just enough to have some water, some protein, enough food to last you for a few days. One knapsack, you could be good. If you're a big family, you probably need two, and you could be good. And you survive, and that's okay. But it's not a huge amount of money that you can't throw. All I can talk about here, for family 2 to 4, you probably can get away with close to $200. And that's just it. And as I say, some areas is more needed. Now, if you listen to me and you're in Florida, Louisiana, Alabama, Texas, some of the areas where there's constant threat of tornadoes, it's even more important. But I think just in general, for snowstorm, we have had massive snowstorm, but I'm telling you, I've seen snowstorms that a little bit more. You could be like shutting, trees could be falling, power outages, and you're stuck out there for a while. I just have some tough stuff at here that I can survive here. And after I saw the storm, I said, what, I need to get some more things so that if I have to get my way out of here, I could literally survive probably for a few days. And that's all. And you do that because I say some of these storms are so big nowadays, and they churn up so much stuff, like what I covered in the beginning of the program, that they spread out for miles, that you could have a whole state, 2, 3 states affected. So you could run into a situation that you could get up, but you can't. No matter where you're going, the storm is there. So someday you have to prepare. What am I going to do if it happened here and now and I'm stuck? And I just tell you that it's good to be prepared for a few days. I'm always mentally trying to say how am I prepared that I can survive here in my house for a few days. But more and more I'm thinking, what if I have to leave? So consider well what you do. Take care of your family and do the best you can, because as I say, we're not immune from any of these things. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, again for your wisdom, the love that you continue to bestow in our hearts, and the way that you guide us. I pray that you may bless each and every one here, that they might look out for their best interests and to do the things that they have to do in light of the events that are happening around us. May you be with us, we pray, for Christ's sake. Amen. Well, thanks again for being with me here. I always appreciate you coming and joining. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow morning as we talk about the current events. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.